Hey, Haribol Damodar. Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna.
Anod Pranam. Jai Shri Prabhupada.
Yeah.
Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Nitai Gaura Hari Bol Hari Bol Hari Bol Nitai Gaura Hari Bol Nitai Gaura Hari Bol Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Thank you very much, Mahesh Pandit Prabhu, for that wonderful kirtan. And welcome all dear devotees to this evening's presentation. So it gives us great pleasure and it's a distinct honor to have His Grace Gopala Hari Prabhu be addressing our congregation and our viewers this evening. We'd also like to welcome His Holiness Jayadvaita Swami Maharaj, who is also present in the assembly. And so, those of you who do not know Gopala Hari Prabhu, he is a very learned scholar in the Bhakti tradition, and he was homeschooled right from young childhood by his mother, Mother Arudha Mataji, who is a very wonderful devotee. She's visited our place several times and inspired hundreds of thousands of devotees, and literally, so many parents to infuse Krishna consciousness in the lives of their children. And Gopal Hari Prabhu is a holder of PhD from Oxford University, one of the most prestigious universities in the world. And he is a disciple of His Holiness Gopal Krishna Goswami Maharaj for many years. He's a preacher at heart, and of course, his academic qualifications are incredible. He's completed a master's degree in science and religion, and he also has a bachelor's degree in engineering from Boise State University, and in electrical engineering in artificial intelligence from Boise State University in Idaho, where his parents have been running the ISKCON Center in Boise. He's a traveler and speaker at interfaith events, university classes, and he's also contributed to radio and television channels on topics of religion, ethics, science, and religion. And he has a number of very incredible academic publications on those topics for science and religion. He's also served as as a professor in I think Florida, and now these days he is in Indianapolis, if I'm not mistaken, and he's also preaching very actively over there.
Yeah.
So thank you, Gopal Hari Prabhu, and welcome.
Thank you, Prabhu. Please accept my humble obeisances. All glory to Srila Prabhupada. It's a pleasure and honor to be here in the assembly of such nice Vaishnavas. Particularly, I'd like to offer my respects to His Holiness Jayadvaita Swami. Actually, today's presentation has been a work in progress, today's talk, and Maharaj has oftentimes answered some questions that I've had on this topic. You may recall when he was visiting Oxford, and he would give us his precious time and association. So very grateful again to be here amongst this wonderful association of devotees. Thank you, Nila Mani Prabhu. Today's topic is may calamities befall us at every step, the Bhagavatam's response to the problem of evil. So I chose to speak on the problem of evil, partly because initially Nila Mani Prabhu had asked me to speak something on science and religion, or one could say more generally, faith and reason. And this topic, the problem of evil, is closely tied with this general topic of faith and reason. And one of the things that I observed in the course of doing science and religion is that most of the time they're talking about the problem of evil. It's one of the most vexing problems, important problems that faces all of humanity. And in the Srimad Bhagavatam, in our tradition, we find a very persuasive, a very complete answer to this question. Something that we don't find present elsewhere. It's something that is truly, you could say, unique and wonderful in this philosophy. And I always feel that we should, in our preaching, we should capitalize on it. We should discuss it further. So there's many arguments for the existence of God. Many people have put forward different arguments in favor of the existence of God. For example, Thomas Aquinas, a very famous Christian philosopher, has put forward 5 lines of argument in arguing for the existence of God. One of those is the argument for motion. He argues that how everything in motion, everything that is moving, has been moved by something else. And therefore, behind it all must be an unmoved mover. And that unmoved mover is none other than God. In the same way, he argues that God must be there as the original cause, the uncaused causer. His third argument is the argument from necessary being, that there must be a being that's behind all other things. So in this way, he gives so many different types of arguments for the existence of God. And many others have given similar arguments. But there's only one argument against the existence of God. One argument that is a good argument as to why we should not believe in God. And that argument is the argument called the problem of evil. That is, if there is an all-loving, all-good, all-powerful God, why should there be so much evil and suffering in this world? And one thing that we find is that this problem, called the problem of evil, has probably turned more people away from religion, from belief in God, than maybe any other issue or problem. It's quite interesting if we look at the lives of very famous people, such as Charles Darwin, that this issue was a major issue in their life. For example, Darwin is very famous, well known for his evolutionary theory. And most people think that Darwin became an atheist because of his evolutionary theory, that, because of the presence, of the idea of evolution, he became an atheist. But that's not actually true. If we read Darwin's biography, if we read the letters that he wrote to his family members, what led to his atheism, what led Darwin to his atheism, was not his evolutionary theory, that came much later, but it was the problem of evil. Darwin, during his life, suffered a lot from personal health ailments, health problems. And as a result of that, he was always in pain. And he couldn't understand why God had given him so much pain. In a similar fashion, during the course of his life, he lost his daughter. She was very young, only 6 or 7 years old when his daughter died. And at that point, Darwin asked the question, he says, which God could take away such an innocent and beautiful creature? That was his daughter. And then in the course of his studies, so to say, his explorations, Darwin also found, so to say, issues that arose that furthered this conviction, or furthered this problem of evil. When he was on his voyage, he was hired by the British Navy to perform exploration work. And when he was hired by them, he went on a voyage throughout the world on the ship. And his professional role was as an observer. He was supposed to observe for the British. This was, part of the British strategy. They would learn and understand other cultures and societies before invading them. So he was there like a professional observer. So one of the places where he goes through on this voyage, which was called the Beagle, is he goes to South America. And there in South America, when he visits one of the countries there, he writes in his diary that he finds that those people are savages. They have no goodness in them. At heart, they are not good people. They're just purely savage, very cruel, very unkind. And he said what was most shocking to him is that in the winter, when there wasn't enough food, then these savages would cut up and eat their wives because there's no food. They'd eat their wives, but they would not eat their dogs because the dogs were at least useful, but the wives were not. So he says, this is what real humanity is. It is, it is blind ignorance. It is simply evil. And the world is simply a struggle, a blind struggle for existence. And therefore he came up with this slogan, the struggle for existence, the survival of the fittest. And he found evidence of this anywhere he looked in the world. And his own belief, his own Christian tradition could not give him satisfactory responses to these questions. Of course, as a side note, I should mention here that other people also went to South America during that time. And in their diaries, they write that these people were very nice, they're very kind, no such recollection. So I should put in that point that Darwin's diary may not be 100% accurate. He might have been filling in data where it was lacking and making some up as he went. So it's a very controversial, his findings. If in fact they were actually cutting up and eating their wives, it's up to question, because no one else in their diaries seems to recall that phenomena. Those other people who visited that land. So, but the general point is that Darwin was actually born in the family of a priest, a very religious, very deeply devout family of Christians. And throughout his life, he searched for the response to the problem of evil, but he could not find it. And there's also documents of letters between him and his wife where he discusses this. And his wife retains her faith in God, but he is unable to. And he says, among all the problems that he finds, he is unable to resolve the greatest evil, which he considers to be the greatest evil, and that is eternal damnation. He asks, why would a kind and loving God send people to hell for eternity? What kindness or goodness could be part of that? And therefore, because his faith, couldn't respond to his questions in a satisfactory way, he decided to give up that Christian faith. So on one hand, he had an agenda, but on the other hand, Darwin, it appears, was seeking answers earlier in his life to these problems, but did not find satisfactory responses. And as I mentioned, the idea of eternal hell was particularly difficult to understand. So this problem led Darwin to atheism and many others. And much of the science and religion debate, much of the philosophical debate surrounds this problem and how a person can respond to it. What is religion's response to this challenge? So at this point, let me state the problem of evil formally, such that it's written as an argument, and then we will see the Vaishnava response to this problem. So the problem of evil is stated like this. The claim is that there is a God who is omniscient, omnipotent, and omnibenevolent. So this is the theistic claim. God is omniscient, which means all-knowing, omnipotent, all-powerful, and omnibenevolent, meaning all-kind. If God is omniscient, God knows of all evil. If God is omnipotent, God has the power to stop all evils. If God is omnibenevolent, God wants to stop all evils. If God exists, God knows of all evil, God has the power to stop all evil, and God wants to stop all evil. However, when we see the world, we see that evil exists. Therefore, God does not exist. So this is, in sum and substance, in a very brief way, the argument, very powerful one. That we say God is all powerful, all good, and all kind. Therefore, evil should not exist. But it does exist. Therefore, God does not exist. And this problem is called the logical problem of evil. Logically speaking, evil should not exist in the presence of a kind and loving God. And the problem of evil has two parts. One is the logical problem, and the other is the evidential problem. The second part, the evidential part, says that, well, even if we find a way to justify the existence of evil, that why it should exist, the evidential problem says, why should there be so much evil? Okay, evil had to exist. For some reason, we somehow justified it. But why is there so much? With such a loving God who plays the flute, who revels in pastimes with the cowherd people of Vrindavan, the villagers of Vrindavan, why would he allow people to be thrown under buses and people to be killed and raped and tortured in so many parts of the world? How do we resolve these two things? And so the logical problem of evil, and then furthermore the evidential problem of evil, is the challenge that has been put forward. And now we want to see that this problem is obviously not a new problem. It's been there ever since human beings have been there. And therefore, all the Vedic scriptures reflect on this issue. They talk about this. The Mahabharata does, the Ramayana does. And now we want to see what is the Srimad Bhagavatam's response to this very difficult problem. How does it discuss it? Now, quite interestingly, the Srimad Bhagavatam doesn't discuss it, you could say, in a very systematic way. The Bhagavatam, as we know, as we've been hearing in all these lectures, it's concerned with rasa, with juice, right? Nigamakalpataror, galitam phalam, shukadamahad, amrita dragya samyutam. It is rasamalayam, right? It is just you could say a receptacle of nectar. And so therefore, Bhagavatam is in some ways already assuming that we have some of these philosophical issues resolved. And it doesn't deal so much with dry philosophy. Rather, it talks about this more in terms of how the devotees respond to this. How do the devotees deal with this issue? So in a search to try to find you could say a response that would work well for a debate, or something very, you could say, cut and dry, like a philosophical response, we find that discussion is actually not discussed so frequently or widely in the Vedic literatures, but we find a very nice discussion in the Vedanta Sutra on this topic. And since the Srimad Bhagavatam is a commentary on the Vedanta Sutra, it's very, you could say, nice, wonderful for us to start with the Vedanta Sutra and see what the Vedanta Sutra's response is to the problem of evil. And then we will move on to the Srimad Bhagavatam and see how the Bhagavatam further, you could say, fine-tunes this response, further elaborates on it, expands on it, and gives a more complete response to this problem. So I'll start with the Vedanta Sutra. The Vedanta Sutra is written as I mentioned, the Bhagavatam is a commentary on the Vedanta Sutra. And it's a commentary because the Vedanta Sutra is written in a very concise, summarized way. Sutras are very cryptic, very dense. And so in the second part, first chapter, text 32, the Vedanta Sutra, in 5 verses, in 5 sutras, starting text 32 to text 37, it responds in 5 sutras to this problem of evil. And it starts out by asking a more general question. It begins with even a very larger question, which is important for this debate. And this first verse says, na prayojanatvat, which means it starts with the objection. The objector asks, if God is fully satisfied and content in himself, why does he create the world and the living beings? Since God is self-satisfied, he would not have any reason to create. Therefore, God could not be the creator of the universe. So one of the, so this verse is very small, but this is the translation of it, more expanded by the Acharyas. One of the characteristics of Krishna is described that Krishna is Atma Rama. Krishna is fully satisfied. He is self-satisfied, and he's content in himself. So the objector says that if this is the definition of God, that Bhagavan is fully self-satisfied, Atma Rama, then why would he create the universe? What would be his reason to create? Only a madman does not create. Only a madman performs something without a purpose. Only a madman performs something without any meaning or purpose. So if God does not have any purpose or in creating the world, then why would he create? God is not a madman. God is self-satisfied. God has nothing to attain. So why would he create? Now, this is a very interesting question. A similar question was asked, by various philosophers, and it's a very difficult one. Why would the Lord, to begin with, create this universe and the living beings? Someone might say, well, he creates out of his compassion. But that is already assuming that there's people, that there's living beings in this world. The very question is, why does he create anyone else? What is the need to show even compassion if there's no one else in this world? Why would he create nature and prakriti in this entire cycle of existence? Well, the Vedanta to this responds very quickly. He says, yes, it is true that God has no purpose, has nothing that is lacking within him. However, the Lord creates why? Lokavattu lila kaivalyam. The Lord creates only for the purpose of play or lila. Although the Lord has no purpose in creating, he still creates for the purpose of play, which is lila, pleasure. Just to have pleasure. The Lord creates this universe and maintains it and interacts in so many different ways with living beings, simply for loving exchanges, as Srila Prabhupada writes in many places. And this is not because of any lacking. It's not that the Lord is unhappy within himself or is lacking, but it is just the very nature of the Lord. It is just the very nature of Krishna, that Krishna speaks, that Krishna, out of his own desire, his very nature, he enjoys loving pastimes. He's full of love. And for love, he has these other living beings so that he can share that love, those loving relationships. To make this point that lila or play is not there to fulfill a need, but is actually there just to further enhance the Lord's, you could say, very nature. It's just the expression of the Lord's nature. The Acharyas give us three metaphors, Ramanujacharya and Baladev Vidyabhushan. They give us three metaphors for lila. And this actually, the first metaphor is from Shankaracharya. The first one says that the Lord performs pastimes, lila, just like a person breathes while sleeping. A person breathes while sleeping because that is the very nature of that person. It's not to fulfill really a need. Of course, we have the need for oxygen, but it's just the nature of a person to breathe. And it's effortless. And so lila is like the breathing of a person while sleeping. However, Ramanujacharya does not agree with that metaphor. He says that lila is something that is intentional, and breathing while sleeping is not intentional. So he says, no, lila is like a prince who plays a game of balls. Just a game with playing ball, soccer, football. And that prince has everything in this world. He has white horses and wealth and everything that a person may want. But still the prince plays. Why? Because it's just the very nature of the prince to play. And so therefore he's playing with a game of balls. And therefore, similarly, the Lord has no need to fulfill anything, but he plays just because this gives the Lord pleasure. And then Baladev Vidyabhushan, sort of adding to Ramanujacharya, he says, yes, this is a very nice metaphor. However, when a prince plays with balls, then the prince is playing with something outside of himself. But the Lord is fully self-content. And everything is within the Lord. So the Lord does not play or use anything outside of himself. We are part of the Lord. Prakriti, nature, is the energy of the Lord. And so therefore this metaphor has some weaknesses. And so therefore Baladev Vidyabhushan, he says that lila or play is just like a person who after awakening gets up from his bed and begins to dance in utter joy of his own existence. And all the while dancing, is amused by the movements of his limbs. I'm sure we all have experience doing this, right? I do this often, right? You wake up from sleep and spontaneously you start to dance and look at the movements of your limbs, just out of the very nature, very happiness of your own existence. Yes, I'm alive today. So like this, lila is like this, that the Lord, this is just the Lord playing with his own limbs. And we find this in the Srimad Bhagavatam, where it's described how when Krishna was performing the Rasa Lila, he was not performing it with any girls who were outside of him, but rather he was performing it with his own reflections, it's described. They are none other than himself. They're his own energy, and he is enjoying with his own energy. So he says, this is what play is. This is what lila is. So three metaphors for this. And the Vedantin quickly responds to the objector, defeats his argument and says, although the Lord has no reason to create, although he's fully self-satisfied, he still has a reason to create. And that is simply out of the desire to play. Now, very good. This is the Vedantin response. However, this does not solve the problem of evil. The fact that the Lord creates the world for play might describe the Lord's activities. It might give a reason as to why he creates the world and the world is the way that it is, but it does not justify his activities. It only describes it. The fact that the world is God's play does not justify suffering and evil in this world. To give you an example, just like if there's children who are playing, and as part of their play, this is true actually, unfortunate, they tear off the wings of a bird. Well, that may describe their activity, that they are playing by tearing off the wings of a bird, but that does not justify it. It still begs the question, Why does the Lord play in the way that he does? What type of play is this? So to this, the objector quickly responds. He says, inequality and cruelty are due to the Lord. It's due to the Lord's play that there's inequality in this world and there's cruelty in this world. It's a very good argument. To this, the Vedantin responds, no, inequality and cruelty are due to the living being's own karma. So inequality and play is just the reason why the Lord creates the world. However, the reason why we suffer, the reason why we find ourselves in the situations that we find them, is because of our own karma, our own choices, our own activities. As we all know, karma is the most common response in our tradition to the problem of evil. People suffer due to their own good or bad deeds. Good actions lead to good reactions. Bad actions lead to bad reactions. Commenting on this verse, the Acharyas give the analogy of rain. An example that Srila Prabhupada also gives very often. They say that the Lord showers his love and his mercy equally upon everyone. The Lord invites everyone equally to join his lila, his play, just like the clouds shower water everywhere. But based upon the seeds that we put in, based upon our own choices and our own desires, that rain will give birth to, rose plants or cactus plants. It will give birth to different fruits. And that is our own doing. That is based upon the seeds that we plant. So this is why inequality and cruelty exists in this world. Our own karma. And karma presupposes free will. So Krishna can only play with us if he's given us free will, if he allows for love. And that free will, due to that free will, we make wrong choices, due to which we get bad reactions. Or we make good choices and we get good reactions. So at this point, the Vedantin has successfully responded to the objector's question. But the objector has one more question. And this is a question that we might have thought about before, and they put it very well. The objector says, no, God is still to blame for suffering and evil in this world, because in the beginning, there was no karma. So the objector says, no, not so quick. In the beginning, there is no karma. So God is still to blame for inequality and cruelty. As I mentioned, karma presupposes free will. We choose our good, our good and bad actions and reactions. But the argument, which is I've heard other places, it's actually a very general argument that philosophers of religion in general ask is, they say, but good people are certainly also free. So a good person who will never rob, who will never steal or kill, is also a free person. It's not that good people don't have freedom or they're limited in any way, but they make good choices. So the fact that Krishna has given us free will doesn't get him off the hook, because why didn't he make our free will good or better, like good people do? Why did he make some people in such a way that they would make the wrong choices, and some people in such a way that they would make good choices? So Krishna is still to blame, because he made us such that, he didn't make us all equally good, such that we would all make good, free choices. And this is something that even our own tradition recognizes, that karma is not the resolution to the problem of suffering. Karma by itself tells us how evil and suffering are distributed in this world. What is the mechanism by which they are distributed? But karma by itself doesn't solve the question why Krishna, made this game the way it is, why Krishna made souls the way they are. Well, to this objection, which is a very difficult objection to respond to, the Vedantin responds with one quick, small reply. It says, no, karma is beginningless. It says, no, the Lord is not to blame for the inequality in this world. It is a living being's karma, and that karma is beginningless. Well, you might wonder, how does this respond to this? Well, the Acharyas, again, commenting on this, they give the seed and sprout analogy. They say, just like, there's no beginning to this cycle of seed and sprout. Similarly, there's no beginning to the karma of living beings. Karma has always existed. And therefore, we cannot put that argument forward that, well, in the beginning, why did Krishna make us different? Why did he make us so that we're choosing good and bad karma? Baladev Vidyabhushan explains on this point. He says that there's 4 things that are co-eternal with the Lord. One is the soul, that is the Atma, is co-eternal with the Lord. Prakriti, or nature, matter, although it's created and destroyed, Prakriti itself is eternal. Although it undergoes transformations, matter is eternal, Prakriti. The third thing that is eternal is Kala, which is time. Although time is the beginning and end of so many things, time itself is eternal. And the fourth is karma, or action, which is also eternal. Karma eternally accompanies the soul. Now, a key point here to understand that Baladev Vidyabhushan mentions is that here by karma, he is not referring to particular actions of the jivas, which of course are temporary and changeable. But by karma, the eternality of karma, what he is speaking of is the flow of action that eternally accompanies the soul. So karma here refers not to specific actions, but to the flow of actions, meaning that the soul is always active. It's always performing activity, and therefore karma is eternally accompanying the soul. And this karma also doesn't refer to what we would obviously, we immediately think of the law of action and reaction. But rather, karma here, the literal translation just means action or activity. Activity eternally accompanies the soul. So, Baladev Vidyabhushan is saying that the response that the Vedanta Sutra is giving is that the souls and their activities are beginningless from all time. There's never been a time when the soul was inactive. It's always been acting. So, therefore, the Lord, to respect the free choice of the living beings, to respect their own choices and their own activities, and their own self, the Lord does not just change their will, their freedom. He does not change their karma forcefully, but rather allows them to come to this world and try it out themselves. So, someone would say, well, beginninglessness doesn't answer the problem of evil. That is true, but it answers the questions of beginnings. It's saying that there is no beginning, and our will is truly who we are. There's a famous philosopher, Schopenhauer, who said that a person is a will. So if Krishna just changed our will, he would essentially be destroying us and then creating a new person. Because our will is who we are. Our freedom, our free will is who we truly are. And Krishna, while having the power to change it, respects that choice of the living being. So therefore, one cannot say that God is under the sway of karma, but rather karma is a self-chosen limitation by God to allow for the jiva's freedom and for his love. Baladev Vidyabhushan writes, the Lord, being perfectly independent, certainly could have created a world all full of joy and with complete disregard to the karma of the jivas. But then his actions, instead of being regulated by any law, would have been lawless, and it would not be a credible attribute of the Lord. Therefore, his creation of a world with perfect regard to the karma of the jivas and to time and substance does not detract from his omnipotence, but shows forth his great wisdom and compassion. Although he can act against all the laws of matter, spirit, and karma, yet he is not doing so. His allowing the jivas to act in accordance with the tendencies generated by their beginningless karma is a matter of his glory and not an instance of his partiality. So here ends the wonderful discussion and response to the problem of evil in the Vedanta Sutra. And it's a very powerful, when I first read this, it was the first time in my life that I found, wow, this is a very, this response actually makes sense. It's a very deep response. Now, with this, you could say, basis, we can now, in the remaining few minutes that we have, we can turn to the Srimad Bhagavatam. I wish we had more time. I'm short of time, but we will turn to the Srimad Bhagavatam and see how the Srimad Bhagavatam adds to this. Particularly, I'd like to turn to the section of Vishmadev's instructions in the first canto, which we've been going through in these classes. And in this scene, Vishmadev is lying on a bed of arrows, and he's, in his final days. The battle of Kurukshetra has finished, and Yudhishthira, Krishna, all the Pandavas, they're going to Vishmadev to greet him, to meet him before he leaves his body. As you know, at this time, Yudhishthira is overcome with grief and sorrow due to the battle of Kurukshetra. He cannot just, resolve the fact that so many people died to put him on the throne due to his Vaishnava humility. He's feeling that all of this was because of me, and it's bearing very heavy on him. So no one can relieve him of his grief. Even Lord Krishna, he wants Bhishmadev only. He feels that we should go to Vishmadev and listen to him and hear his response to Yudhishthira's questions. So Yudhishthira Maharaj, the Pandavas and Krishna go to Bhishma. And when they reach there, then Vishmadev is so pleased to see them in their reinstated in their great glory, see the glorious Pandavas who are like the denizens of heaven on this planet, and greater than them, great devotees of the Lord. It said that Maharaj Yudhishthira was so pure, was so exalted, that when he walked, he did not touch the earth. So when he sees them, then Bhishmadev says some very nice words. And then, before even Yudhishthira can ask, he starts to ask, why is it that the Pandavas underwent so much suffering? And one of the first words that he says here, finding that. He says, "O sons of Dharma, alas, how painful, how unjust, you who have always taken shelter of Brahmanas, Dharma, and Achyuta Krishna, do not deserve to live such a miserable life." He says, "O sons of Dharma, you don't deserve to live such a miserable life. You've taken shelter of the Brahmanas, Dharma, and Krishna. So why should you live such a miserable life? Why did you have to go through so many difficulties? They were, fed poison in their childhood. Their wife was insulted in the assembly. They lost their children in the battle. They were exiled to the forest for 14 years. And one of the first things that Bhishmadev does is that, and here I'm summarizing in the interest of time, is that he, while he accepts karma as a response to the problem of suffering in general, he rejects karma as a reason as to why the Pandavas were suffering. He says that it is not possible that the Pandavas are suffering due to their past karma. Throughout the Bhagavatam, the Pandavas' spotless character, reputation are emphasized. So how is it possible that such great devotees who have taken shelter of the Lord could be suffering due to their karma? So then Vishmadev turns to the possibility of time. He says, well, maybe all of this is due to inevitable time. Vishmadev says, in my opinion, this is all due to inevitable time, under whose control everyone in every planet is carried, just as the clouds are carried by the wind. Srila Prabhupada describes how even these planets are living entities who take the bodies of the planets. So just like we take the bodies of humans and animals, certain souls that are very pious, they may take the bodies of planets. And even the planets are carried forward by inevitable time. Just like we say Mother Earth. So Earth is personified as Bhumi, and she's also a planet. So what to speak of us small living entities, but these planets are revolving around the wheel of time, which is described as the Sudarshan Chakra of the Lord. You always see that Lord Vishnu holds the Sudarshan Chakra. Why this chakra? Because this is the wheel of time. No one can stand before it. The Lord's weapon is therefore perfect, and it crushes everything as it moves forward. These planets are described as small ants on the rim of this wheel of time. And as the wheel moves forward, it crushes these planets and everything. All the living beings' lifespans and all their endeavors are destroyed in the course of time. So Vishmadev says that maybe it is simply just due to time, the movement of time, that all of this is happening. But then Vishmadev rejects this option as well. We know of the famous verse in the Srimad Bhagavatam, which says, Ayur haranti vaipunsam, udyan astam jayannaso, dasyarthe yat kshanonita, uttama shloka vartaya. That how, with the rising and setting of the sun, every person's lifespan is decreased. Except, it says, for those who utilize their time in discussing topics of the all-good personality of Godhead. So, time is always moving forward, except when we are attending Srimad Bhagavatam class. Because when we're hearing and chanting about the Lord, then time does not affect the devotees of the Lord. So in the case of the Pandavas, they were, what to speak of hearing and chanting about the Lord, they were in the presence of the Lord. So there's no way that time could be limiting them. So Vishmadev says that no, time could not be the reason why the Pandavas are suffering. How could there be reverses in the presence of King Yudhishthira, the son of the demigod controlling religion, Bhima, the great fighter with a club, the great bowman Arjuna with his mighty weapon, Gandiva, and above all, the Lord, the direct well-wisher of the Pandavas? How could there be any reverses? So Vishmadev says he rejects time as an option as well. So then finally, Vishmadev turns to the ultimate cause, which he feels is the ultimate cause of the Pandava suffering. And that is, he says, that all of this, he says, is simply due to the Supreme Lord. It is due to this Krishna who is standing next to you. It cannot be because of karma. It is not due to time. It is not due to destiny, but it is simply due to the will, the plan of Krishna. Vishmadev says, O king, no one can know the plan of the Lord, Sri Krishna. Even though great philosophers inquire exhaustively, they are bewildered. So actually, everything that is happening ultimately especially in the case of the devotee. But even in the general case, ultimately everything is happening due to the plan or the mercy of the Lord. And karma is the mechanism by how it plays itself out. But it's actually happening due to the plan of the Lord. So Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he asked this question in his commentary. He says that if Krishna was the cause of Yudhishthira's suffering, why did Bhishma not say this from the beginning? To this, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur responds that it would have been indecorous, not so nice, for Bhishma to directly point to Krishna as the cause of the Pandava's suffering. Since Krishna was personally present during the conversation, Bhishma first, blames it on time and destiny. But everyone agrees that Bhishma's intent, however, was to say that this situation had arisen because of Krishna, the mover and maintainer of the whole universe. Well, then someone may ask, why is the Lord doing this? One is drawn to ask, what is the purpose of the Lord's plan? Why is the Lord's plan in the way that it is? So then Bhishma indicates that no matter how much one tries to understand the plan of God, who is supremely independent, it is impossible. Vishmadev says, even though great philosophers inquire exhaustively, they are bewildered. Although it is Krishna's plan, no one can know the plan or understand the plan of the Lord. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says, even if asked by Bhishma, the Lord will not speak, but will evade him. Even if the Lord, says something, he still bewilders everyone. Therefore, his plan is to be followed, but is not subject to inquiry. So Krishna himself will not reveal his plan. Why? Because his plan is to be followed. It is not subject to inquiry. However, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur is not happy with this. He says that still, even though we cannot understand the plan of Krishna, one is still drawn to inquire. Why is the Lord giving his devotees and people in general, why is he giving them suffering? So, first of all, he says, although no one can know the plan of the Lord, Bhishma urges one to accept that plan when it unfolds because his plan is perfect. Right? The devotee must have this faith, must know that we cannot know the plan, but it is perfect. There's never been any change in his Krishna's mind or his actions, Bhishma says, because he is the soul of all, impartial without a second, free from pride and free from all sins. So the Lord acts for the benefit of all, and his plan is perfect, and especially for the benefit of his pure-hearted devotees. And why does he do it particularly? The Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says his plan is perfect because ultimately it uplifts his devotees. The Lord uplifts his devotees in the way that he feels is best for them. A devotee understands that the happiness and distress he or she undergoes while performing bhakti yoga is a special mercy of the Lord. The Bhagavatam says, just as a father out of his own accord looks after the good of his child, you personally also do what is good for us. The Lord certainly knows what is best for me, even if I don't know. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur writes, karma and time have no effect on a devotee, so this is Krishna's personal arrangement for me. Out of his mercy, Krishna sometimes gives me happiness and sometimes gives me distress. By giving temporary distress, Krishna frees his devotees from the actual cause of distress, namely their forgetfulness of the Lord. Suffering drives the devotee to remember and take refuge in the Lord. And that remembrance forever frees the devotee from repeated birth and death in this world. So the Bhagavatam is teaching what we could call devotional heroism, that the devotee overcomes suffering by the strength of devotion, by being fully convinced that the Lord's plan is perfect, that the Lord is the most loving Father in this world. And simply through my service and devotion to the Lord, I can overcome these calamities. Therefore, we have that famous verse which we started from in this, the title of this talk is Queen Kunti's verse. I wish that those calamities would happen again and again so that we could see you again and again. For seeing you means that we will no longer see repeated births and deaths. It's interesting that in this verse, a beautiful verse that refers to the Lord, she refers to Krishna as Jagat Guru, which means, Jagat Guru means the teacher of the world. So just a few classes before, His Holiness Jayadvaita Maharaj was saying that how ultimately Krishna is the ultimate, is the spiritual master, the Guru. And Krishna manifests through the spiritual master, through the Diksha and Shiksha Guru. Here Queen Kunti is saying, yes, he is the Jagat Guru, he is the teacher of the world. So all the trials and tribulations in this world are being put forward by Krishna, who is the teacher of the world. And these calamities help us become free from the calamities of birth and death. And one last quote from Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. He says, commenting on this verse, he says, Krishna's first expression of mercy bears the fruit of tormenting pain. His second wave of mercy causes an extraordinary shower of sweet bhakti rasa to rain down on his devotees. And Krishna promises that I give mercy in the form of my very self. So Krishna definitely puts us through trials and tribulations, through difficulties in this world. But once the devotee is fixed in his devotion to the Lord, then he gives a shower of the sweet mercy, sweet bhakti rasa. And then the Lord, what to speak of giving everything, he gives himself to that devotee. He chooses to serve them as he did in the case of the Pandavas. So I will stop at this point. I think I'm a little over time. And if there's any comments, questions, I would be very grateful. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Gopala Hari Prabhu. I just want to congratulate you on an incredibly wonderful presentation that you built from the ground up with a powerful foundation, step by step, and culminating in the extremely sweet nectar of how the Lord gives himself completely to us, or to those of us who turn to him in the proper process, and just how incredibly merciful that we can't even fathom the depth of his mercy and the availability of his mercy. So I must thank you for a very powerfully packaged presentation that goes to the heart of a lot of the questions that we all develop in our journey, understanding our reality. So wonderful, wonderful. Thank you. If you don't mind, we can have a few minutes of questions. Is that okay, Prabhu? All right. So we have like at least 3 questions out here. So I'll start with Nitika. Nitika has a question. Go ahead, Nitika Madhuri.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Thank you so much for such a wonderful insightful class. Very, very nice. So can you please clarify my doubt? Maybe I'm not understanding it clearly, because Srila Prabhupada writes in the introduction of Gita that of all the 5 elements, the super soul, the living entity, the material nature, the time, and the karma, the former 4 are eternal, but karma is not eternal. So I'm kind of trying to understand the gist here. Thank you.
Yes, very nice question. Thank you for highlighting this point. In his commentary, Baladev Vibhushan Acharya is agreeing with Srila Prabhupada. Karma itself is temporary, therefore we can change it. I do something bad, I can perform some tapasya, ask for forgiveness, and I can change the karma that I have. But what he is referring to, and what the Vedanta Sutra is referring to, is the flow of karma. Meaning that karma as activity is eternal. That flow of activity, meaning activity is beginningless, it is eternal along with the soul. Not the individual actions, with the flow of activity. And personally, I feel this is a very significant point because in our movement, we have some, quite sometimes speculation as to, well, was there a time when the soul, wasn't, there, it wasn't with Krishna, it wasn't active. But here the Vedanta Sutra is saying very clearly that no, we've always been eternal and we've always been active. Maybe for some time we can be merged in the Brahma Jyoti, but that was not the case from beginningless time. From beginningless time, we were with Krishna. And in the Srimad Bhagavatam, there's one very nice passage in the 4th canto in the Puranjana narrative, where the Srimad Bhagavatam specifically writes how Puranjana, in his next life, Puranjana represents all of us. He's like the everyman. This is an allegory where Puranjana is the soul. In his next life, Puranjana reincarnates as a queen, as a lady, and when her husband dies, Malayadhvaja, then Puranjana as a queen Vaidharbi becomes very overcome with distress. She starts to cry and she wants to enter the fire with her husband. And at that time, Krishna, in the form of a Brahmana, he comes to the queen. And he stops her and he says, "Why are you crying?" He says, "Don't you remember your eternal friend, your unknown friend, Avigyata? Don't you remember your unknown friend, and that we two have been together since eternity? And that long ago," he says, "you left me in search of some place. You left me in search of carnal pleasures, and you came down to this earth. We were two swans in the Manasa lake. We were two swans in this lake," he describes in this way. "And you, desiring, carnal pleasures, you left me, and you came to this world." So the Bhagavatam in that section is very clear that we've always been free beings. We've always had choice. And even in the spiritual world, we've been playing with Krishna and we have freedom and free will. But yadrichaya, for some reason or the other, because free will is inherently free, that's the very definition of free will, that it's inexplicable to some degree. We chose to leave Krishna and come to this material world. So yes, karma activity has been with the soul always. Nice question.
Thank you very much, Prabhu. The next question is from Shyam Kund Prabhu. Shyam Kund Prabhu, go ahead.
Hare Krishna, Gopala Hari Prabhu. Thank you so much for a very systematic and logical class. Very nice. Thank you. The question I have is, you talked about the evil, right, from the different religious perspective and connected to the Vedic, the Srimad Bhagavatam and all. So in most religions, evil is represented as a person. So from Vedic literature perspective, do you think the evil is more kind of represented as a Maya? And if yes, is there a good evil and the bad evil? The reason I'm asking is because there's a Yoga Maya and the Mahamaya. So the good suffering may be coming directly from Krishna and the bad suffering comes directly from Maya. Is that what is the understanding?
So this was one reason why the title of the talk was the Srimad Bhagavatam's response to the problem of suffering. The reason being is because actually in Vaishnava philosophy, there is really no evil in the Christian sense of the evil, like a Satan, like something that is inherently evil. And the reason is because there's no eternal hell, there's no eternal damnation. There's nothing that's inherently evil. We may be bad, we may do the wrong thing for some time, but that doesn't make us evil. It's that we did bad. Just like I have a small daughter, and sometimes she's naughty. And so she may break something. And she may do something that's unkind, let's say. That doesn't mean that a parent will go to the child and say, you are evil. No, you've been mischievous. You've done something bad. And therefore, you must now, be disciplined a little bit for some time, according to the degree of the mistake. So that very word and concept is very misleading, that there's something that is evil. And precisely also because in Vedic philosophy, everything comes from the Lord. Everything is part of the Lord. There's nothing independent or separate from the Lord. So if the Lord is all good, then how can there be something that is evil? How can there be something that is inherently bad or evil? So for these two reasons, Krishna is actually everything in this world is good. But due to our free will, our freedom, we may make the wrong choice. And in that way, we are in some ways doing the wrong thing. We've been bad, but it's just the wrong choice. It's Krishna wants us to come back to him, and very soon we do come back to him. And in fact, there's other sections in the Bhagavatam that seem to suggest that ultimately every soul does come back to the Lord. In this metaphor, this allegory that the Bhagavatam gives of the merchant caravan, there's one verse there which says that those who are on this caravan, they go through over mountaintops and jungles, and they're bitten by scorpions and snakes. But eventually this caravan of merchants that have left home and gone to the forest, they eventually return back to their starting point, which is the Lord, Krishna. So it's just it's a temporary journey that helps in some ways to increase our devotion for the Lord. After that, Prabhupada, he gives the analogy of the dream. When we wake up from the dream, we don't remember the details of the dream, but we do remember that it was a bad dream. I never want to go back there. What a relief to be out of it. So this is why we don't fall again to the material world, because that impression stays with us. You say, been there, done that. Biggest mistake ever. I don't want to go back to that material world.
Thank you.
Thank you, Prabhu. Next question is from Santosh Chaitanya Prabhu. Santosh Chaitanya Prabhu, go ahead. Unmute.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Thank you very much for the nice class. I have a question that when you say Krishna created this universe for play, so my question is, Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita that this world is full of miseries. So why would he make such a place full of miseries? So that's one question. And the second question is, when this question is answered, that when we ask that why we are here, the question is answered that because of envy. So if we are here because of envy, then why this play for Krishna? So I'm a little confused with that. So would you please answer these questions?
Very nice questions. So when the question is, why does the Lord create? In some ways, the question itself is from the point of view of some ignorance. This was the objector asking the question, because as we see according to the Vedanta Sutra, nature, the souls, they're all eternal. They're coexisting with God. So in what sense can we talk about creation? Well, we can talk about it in two ways. One way that the Lord creates is that the Lord creates in the sense that the Lord maintains us. The Lord keeps us into existence, keeps us in existence. If the Atma is eternal, therefore it's beginningless, the Lord exactly didn't create it out of nothing, but the Lord maintains it at every moment, and in this way creates at every moment. The Bhagavatam has this verse that the Lord, due to his glance, everything stays put. But the moment that he removes his glance, everything will be destroyed. Therefore, the Lord never removes his glance upon the material energy. So, therefore, Lord Vishnu, Krishna is always described as the maintainer, because our acharyas are really not impressed by creation. We're beginningless. What's the meaning of creation? Really, it's the issue of maintaining, that the Lord maintains the living beings. So the Lord creates in that sense. And secondly, the Lord also creates in the sense that he keeps the cycle of creation and destruction of the universe in motion. So that at the end of, all the souls go back into him and then they all come out. Now, why does the Lord do this? To go to your question, why would he, continue to keep us in motion, so to say, keep us alive? So the reason is because out of his compassion, and also play, meaning that the Lord wants to reciprocate loving exchanges. Right? The Lord wants to reciprocate loving exchanges. And loving exchanges requires or presupposes free will. There's no meaning to love without free will. And free will presupposes the choice not to love. See? There's no meaning of love if you cannot not love. So Krishna has to, in some ways, to play is a general term, but really it means more the exchange of love. Lila means exchange of mellow or rasa or love. So Krishna cannot have these loving relationships unless he gives us that choice. And it's only a true choice if we have the option of making that choice. So, many people say, well, why couldn't Krishna make free will in such a way that we would just always make the right choice? And we really would, although we had the choice, but we would really never make the wrong choice. And this is asking the Lord to do a contradiction. Just like this is a very, powerful common argument that just like the Lord is all powerful, but is it reasonable to ask the Lord to draw a square circle? You go to Krishna and say, Krishna is all powerful, so can he draw a square circle? Well, perhaps he certainly could, but your question doesn't make sense. Either it's a circle or it's a square. How can you ask the Lord to draw a square circle? In the same way, it is unreasonable to ask the question, can the Lord make free beings that don't have a choice? That they don't have a true choice? What's the meaning of that freedom? Freedom means that you have a choice. So God is all powerful, but still we cannot expect God to do logically inconsistent things. If we want free will, if we want to be real people and we don't want to be robots, then we truly have to have choice. We have to have choice in which we can, even if we're in the spiritual world, everything is perfect. Even if, there's no flaw in our love for Krishna, but still, as we see in this material world, happens also. Although there's no problem, but still we have the choice to love or not to love. Because that's the meaning of love. And Krishna provides that capacity to us.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you.
I think we have a long line of questions. I don't know how many more we can do. So let's see if we can keep them short. We'll try to make them short. So the next one is from Brandy Beckham. Go ahead.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Gopal, I actually read your book on this. Well, you're part of the book. And I wanted to ask if a part where it says that karma and time has no effect, and you mentioned this in your talk as well, has no effect on living beings, well, on the devotees, but cruelty and inequality is due to living beings' own dharma. Is this a distinction that we see between the relationship that the Lord has with his devotees and non-devotees? If inequality and cruelty is due to our own dharma, but Krishna takes that effect away from his devotees. I hope my question makes sense. Thank you.
I didn't completely follow, but I think I get the gist, and you can tell me if this is correct. So everything, the deeper point that the Srimad Bhagavatam is making, that everything is going on by the plan of the Lord. And because the Lord is inconceivable, the Lord's plans are also inconceivable. And the nature of a great devotee like the Pandavas is that they may inquire, they try to find a reason for things, but ultimately they accept the plan of the Lord. They surrender to it because the Lord is too great for us. Now, part of Krishna's plan is that, if we do the wrong thing, then we'll get a wrong reaction so we can learn. And that's what basically karma is. That's what karma, takes place. That's how it works. So for the general population, Krishna set down general laws or general rules, like the government does, of action and reaction that will gradually teach us. Karma is a teaching mechanism to make us into better people. And similarly, Krishna is also given the phenomenon of time, that after some time we die and we have to go into another body. But in the case of a devotee, Krishna, if the devotee does something wrong, the devotee will get a reaction like the non-devotee will, like karma. But that reaction for the devotee is not karma. That's given personally by the Lord, you could say in a slightly loving way, to help that devotee, in a personal way, to help that devotee come closer to him. And so that reaction may be minimized, or it may be given in such a way that the devotee can immediately understand that Krishna is reciprocating here with me, is trying to teach me something, and is trying to bring me closer to him. So that is Vishmadev's point, that even in people who are so glorious and wonderful, like the Pandavas, they may undergo distress, and in their case, the general rules of karma are not applying, but it is simply the mercy of the Lord. It is a plan of the Lord, because the Lord wants to elevate them from greatness to eternal glory, from already being great to eternally being glorious. So that he wanted to glorify the Pandavas. He wanted to really make that diamond shine. Although it's already a diamond, he wants to make it shine even further. And that's a more nuanced thing. But at the same time, Vishmadev's teachings apply to everyone. That karma is the mechanism, but behind karma is the loving, hand of the Lord that is trying to help us all progress. So it kind of, both things play together in a very nice way. There's these general rules of karma, but then as we advance, we will see more how Krishna is interacting personally with us. There's general time, but time itself is not acting on the lives of devotees.
Thank you, Prabhu. Just one more, a couple more. Chaitanya Bhava, Prabhu, go ahead.
Hare Krishna, Gopala Hari Prabhu. Thank you so much for your class. Very nice class. I will just make it very quick. So my question was regarding the verse itself that Kunti Maharani says. So she says that I wish that these calamities would happen again and again, so that she can see Krishna again and again. And that would mean that there wouldn't be any repeated births and deaths. So I was always very I had a question about this verse itself, because it almost seems like the goal is to avoid repeated births and deaths. I mean, I think that's a goal I think as devotees we should aspire for, maybe. But it almost seems like we are asking for calamities to get rid of a bigger calamity. So could you explain on that?
Yes. This is a very, you could say, your question has more general parts to it, which is, why the devotee prays for freedom from suffering. Why does the devotee pray for freedom from birth and death? And aren't these selfish desires, material desires? And no, that's not true. And the reason for this is, I believe it's in the Sandarbhas, but in one place, Jiva Goswami, he gives a definition of what love is. And because our goal is love, and someone say, well, happiness means that if I'm happy, it obviously means that I'm not loving the Lord. No, that's not true. So Jiva Goswami, he says that he gives a definition of love, where he says that love means feeling happy, seeing the happiness of the beloved. A definition of love is the happiness one feels of the beloved. So happiness is not in a contradiction with love. Rather, like Krishna says in the Gita, Susukham Kartamabhyam, if we're actually loving, we will be happy. We will feel pleasure, happiness. But the difference between love and lust is that it's not happiness that's experienced by one's own pleasure, due to one's own sense pleasure, but it's the happiness one feels by seeing when the senses of Krishna are happy. So the devotee of the Lord is not exactly here praying for, okay, Krishna, please give me a nice house with a 3-car garage and a flat screen TV. No, the devotee here is praying for Krishna's mercy to offer unalloyed devotional service to Krishna. But Queen Kunti knows that as long as I am attached to this world, she says, Sneha Pasham Imam Chindi, Pandishu Vishnishu, that she asks for detachment. She knows that as long as I'm attached to this world, I won't be able to serve Krishna nicely. As long as I am attached to this world and I'm in this cycle of repeated birth and death, I cannot serve Krishna nicely. So therefore, she's asking the Lord, please free me from the cycle of birth and death, which means free me from the attachments, the bondage, the conditioning of this world, so that, and then the verse after that is Gange Voghamudanvati, right? So that my mind can flow towards you, can be continuously attracted to you. So she's asking for that attraction to the Lord. And her desire to become free from birth and death is not necessarily in conflict with her desire to serve the Lord. Because joy and happiness, freedom from suffering is a natural characteristic of the soul. Now, if Krishna wants her to suffer, then she's asking. She's asking, may calamities come at every step, because what she wants is the association of the Lord. So clearly she is not asking for mundane happiness. Her desire is simply to serve the Lord without the encumbrance or the limitation of birth and death. And furthermore, she makes this point that she's not just asking for suffering because she's a pessimist and she's a fatalist, but she's saying, give me those calamities if in those calamities we are blessed with your sight. Apunar bhavat darshanam, we won't see birth and death again, but we will see you. If in those calamities we are blessed with your sight. And so she wants to see the Lord, and those calamities help her. Just on this point, I want to tell a little short story that illustrates this very nicely, very short example of this. There was a devotee in Europe, and he had joined the ashram. He was a full-time devotee, and he was distributing books. He was a book distributor. Very wonderful, very nice devotee. And one day when he was out distributing books, he went to a very sort of obscure area of the country. And he was, driving on a dirt road. And all of a sudden, out of the bushes, these, 2 thugs came out. And they stopped his car, and they pulled him out of the car, they beat him up, and they drove off with his car. So this devotee, plan of the Lord, plan of Krishna, he experiences this, and then he goes back to the ashram. And there at the ashram, he tells the other devotees what had happened. And then he tells them, he says that I'm actually very happy, I'm very grateful that Krishna allowed me to go through this experience. And he said, because I never told all of you, before I joined the ashram, I was actually a professional thief. That was my profession. I used to steal. And please forgive me, I never told you this, but I never stole anything from the temple for all of you. Once I came to Krishna consciousness, I completely gave up all those bad habits. And I've just been very happy in Krishna consciousness. I've, completely given up those bad habits. But he said that ever since I became a devotee, although I gave up those bad habits, I never realized how much suffering I used to give people when I would steal something from them. I never actually ascertained what wrong I was doing and how wrong it was. And, there was a possibility I could have still done it by accident. But after going through this experience, where, he was thrown out of the car, beaten up, and then it was taken away, he said, for the first time, I understood how much pain I gave to people when I robbed something from them. And so I'm so grateful for Krishna, and I just see why he gave this to me, so that I could learn this very deep lesson. So this is the difference between the devotee suffering and the non-devotee suffering. And this is how and why Queen Kunti is saying that how calamities bring us closer to Krishna. That calamity that devotee went through brought him very close to him, very close to Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you.
I'm sorry. How is it the time factor does not impact us when we hear the Bhagavatam? You'd mentioned that. It's just a question from the audience. Can give a quick one.
That's a very nice question. How does the time factor not affect us when we're hearing and chanting about the Lord? Well, the answer that I can think of, and maybe Maharaj can further elaborate on this, is that just like the pure devotees who are in this material world, they're known as Jivan Mukta, meaning that they are liberated while they are living. And this is because they're not living in the body. Well, they're living in the body, but they're not identifying with the body. Time affects the body, but when we are not identifying with the body, then in fact, time doesn't affect anyone. That is the simple fact, that the soul is never affected by time. But because we're identifying with the body, therefore we are affected by time. So by hearing Srimad Bhagavatam and reading Srimad Bhagavatam, we start to, the soul and the body start to detach. We start to feel distant from our body. This thing isn't me. It's just this cage that I'm in. I am eternal. I am, Satchid Ananda, eternal, full of knowledge, full of bliss. And so therefore, these temporary time limitations have nothing to do with me. So that is what I can think of. If Maharaj, if you would like to further expand, that would be very nice.
Okay.
Well, when we're hearing Bhagavatam, for the person who's not hearing Bhagavatam, his time is disappearing. He's got 100 years or whatever it is, and everything's a loss.
Mm.
But for the person who's hearing Bhagavatam, it's a gain.
Mm.
He's coming closer to Krishna. So the materialist, every time the sun rises and sets, it's a loss for him. And for the devotee, every time it rises and sets, it's a gain.
Wow. Thank you, Maharaj. Yes, this is specifically how reading Srimad Bhagavatam helps us. Yes. That's amazing, actually. Thank you.
Thank you, Maharaj. Okay, so we have one last one. Mother Bhagavati has hand up.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Oh, okay. So, Prabhu, thank you so much. It was an amazing presentation. But what I was thinking about was how, in the Bhagavad Gita, when it describes the length of Lord Brahma's lifetime, and it goes on and on and on. And then Prabhupada says from our viewpoint, it seems interminable, but from the point of eternity, it's as brief as a lightning flash. And so I was wondering whether the suffering, the thing is, where you look around at the world and things that are going on, you hear about it, it's like, oh my God, it's so intense suffering. So is it that as we manage to convey to people and imbibe ourselves that that we're not these bodies, that when we finally come to some spiritual understanding, the things that seem so very painful here will be like that, like a dream. I guess that's my
Yes,
question.
no, that's a very nice question, actually. Thank you for raising this. Just because I was engaged in this study, at a certain point, I wanted to find out how many times, what's the most common example that the Srimad Bhagavatam uses to describe the human condition, meaning our condition in this world. And the most common example that the Srimad Bhagavatam uses is the dream state. Over 60 times in the Srimad Bhagavatam, the Bhagavatam says that our condition right now is like a person who is dreaming, a person in a dream state, a person in a dream state. And so, so if the Bhagavatam is repeatedly saying this, we should take it very seriously, that this is the dream analogy. The dream analogy should be taken seriously. And if we think about the dream example very carefully, it's very deep, because when I'm dreaming, then I didn't go anywhere, right? I'm lying on my bed, my hard or soft bed, whatever it is, but I'm lying on my bed, tucked in my sheets, very blissfully sleeping. I didn't go anywhere. Yet in the dream, within the dream, I traveled to so many different places. I experienced a tiger chasing me. I experienced good and bad things in the dream. And all of that was 100% real to me. In the dream, I'm 100% convinced that I am there. And it's very long. It also seems very long. But the moment I wake up from that dream, all of that vanishes. It passes away. And although just a moment before I was firmly convinced that I'm in the dream, now I'm in the waking state and I'm firmly convinced that I'm there. And I've never left where I was from. Yet I had gone to so many places and now returned to my bed and awoken. So this is something that, in our own Vaishnava discussions, it's always a big controversy. Did we fall or did we not fall? Srila Prabhupada says both things. And when Srila Prabhupada was asked this question, then he responded in a letter. The letter's title was The Crow and Dal and Fruit Logic. I forget the exact name.
Yeah.
Yes, and in that, Srila Prabhupada gives the analogy of the dream. And he says that it's both things, right? When you're dreaming, you never leave, you're where you're at. And when you are, and at the same time, you leave, you go into this entire world. So, in fact, our position is like that. And this material world, it's quite inconceivable. So to answer your question, it is inconceivable that how these millions of lifetimes, Prabhupada says millions and millions of lifetimes, the soul has been here for such a long time that it's almost called Nitya, just like Lord Brahma's lifespan is also referred to as Nitya in the Bhagavatam. But all of that is just a dream. It is a passing moment. How is that possible? Well, that is Krishna's arrangement. Some places I've read that it's our coming in this mature world is like we are just closing our eyes, turning away from Krishna for a moment, and the whole material world takes place. All the different births and deaths, the houses and the children, and all of these things that are so important happen within that moment that we turn away. And after realizing that no, this is not my home, that I won't feel pleasure like this, when we turn back to Krishna, when we open our eyes, we see Krishna there again. So, so of course we don't know. Only Krishna knows. But yes, that's how it's been described. And Prabhupada actually makes this point, like you're saying, that it's so long that it's almost described as eternal. Our stay in this world is almost described as eternal. But therefore it leaves a very deep impression on our heart. And therefore Krishna assures us we will never make that mistake again. though we have the freedom and free will, we will never make that mistake again.
Thank you very, very much.
Thank you so much, Gopal Hari Prabhu, on behalf of all the devotees. There's even more questions, but we are unfortunately gone way beyond the time. So I want to thank you once again. Just a couple of quick announcements for those devotees who are joining us. So upcoming speakers, of course, His Holiness Jayadvaita Swami Maharaj is here with us Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays at 8 p.m. on the Canto 1 lecture series. And then after that, we'll start Canto 2 very soon. So please keep coming for that. Then on Saturday morning at 11 a.m., we have His Grace Dwarkadish Prabhu and Her Grace Vishaka Priya Mataji on a very special topic, GPS for Immunity, a spiritual perspective on boosting our immunity. Definitely come for that. On Saturday evening at 8 p.m., Hari Parshada Prabhu will be talking to us. And then on Sunday evening, Anand Vrindavan Mataji and Vajrabihari Prabhu will be talking on the topic of We Are Not Vishnu. So please stay tuned, please join us, and we will be happy to host all of you and look forward to seeing you all. Thank you very much, and thank you again, Gopal Hari Prabhu. If you'd like to say a quick Hari Bol, I'd like to, I'll just open up for everyone. Neelmani Prabhu, you can get started, and then open everyone.
Thank you, Gopal Hari Prabhu, for an absolutely brilliant presentation. It was thoroughly relishable and enjoyable, and such a nice logical perspective that just appeals to our intellect to hear more and more and understand more and more. So thank you so much for that presentation. And I'm sure we'll be inviting you again to come very, very soon to share some more of this kind of presentation. So thank you.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Prabhu. Hari Bol. Hare Krishna. You can unmute yourself if you'd like to say quick Hari Bol.
Hari Bol.
Hari Bol, Prabhu. Thank you, Prabhuji.
Very much.
Hari Bol, Prabhuji. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Gopal Hari Prabhu.
Thank you so much.
Hare Krishna.
Gopal Hari Prabhu, thank you very much.
Hare
So nice class. Thank you.
Hare Krishna. Thank you very much for the class.
Krishna, thank you.